We get it. Good morning and welcome. I'm Mary Jane Hooper. I'm on the board of the Pastoral Reflections Institute. And what a pleasure it is to be here this morning in person. We've got quite a morning in store for you. And a lot has been going on behind the scenes too. You know, I think probably most of us here tune in on Sunday mornings to hear Father Don, 10 o'clock WRR. And now we are really expanding, trying to get his message out to as many people as possible. We've got the podcast, and you can go to the website, and there are amazing interviews and more planned with other spiritual teachers. So it's a great opportunity for us all. So let me, with no further ado, bring in Father Don. Okay.
I asked her to say before I came out, here's Donnie, but she didn't. So, well, that's the way it is. Wow, it's amazing how you get used to things and how certain things that become a part of your life, especially if they're at the core of your life, you miss them, and it throws you off, throws you out of balance. And I think we've all been through something like that in these last, how long has it been since we heard a word called COVID? But anyway, it's just the second time in almost 2 years that I've been up in front of a group of people, you know, and it feels so good. So I'm praying that my, how would I say this? My enthusiasm, which means infused with God, in theos, means filled with God, that my enthusiasm that I can feel in my heart for being in this kind of environment will be a vehicle to help me communicate. So what I'd like to do is start with an intention that I'm going to ask you to join me in making with me. And it's going to go like this. You know my story. I'm 81 years old. I was ordained in 1967, right before Vatican, well, I was ordained after Vatican Council, but at the very heart of my seminary life, I was blessed by having the most amazing teachings coming out of Holy Mother Church from Rome, new directives, new images of how we should imagine ourselves and our relationship with God and each other and our relationship with other churches. Two things really were powerful for me. One was that the church was saying through its documents that the one most crucial thing that you have in your life to deal with when it comes to moral decisions is, yes, the church gives you direction and guidance, but there's a thing, and this is the way it described it, there's a thing, a presence inside of you, in your heart. And the Vatican Council called your heart a tabernacle in which God dwells. And you go there to find the answer to very complex moral questions. But not just moral questions, but big questions. Like, who am I? What am I here for? And who are you? Who are you, God? So my dream, my hope, my longing inside my heart right now is if I can be used by God in the next 2 sessions, they're about 45 minutes each. There's a timer so you can relax. I'm not going to go over. But 2 sessions and with a 20-minute break in between, which I'd love to come out and talk with you outside. And I want you to imagine this as a kind of intimate relationship. I can't see your faces very clearly, but that's fine. But my imagination is, if you just think of each one of you, my imagination is I'm having brunch on a Saturday morning with each one of you. So just imagine this is brunch with Don. Met you at a restaurant in Fort Worth, and I'm going to talk to you. And what I'm praying God will use me to tell you about is the answer to those three big issues. Who am I? Why am I here? And who is God? But most especially the last one. So, there's a special thing happening today in the Catholic Church. Every day of the church's year, they have something that we commemorate, we remember, we reflect upon. It's called the Feast of the Day. Anybody know what the feast day is today? Got it, guardian angels. And you know, it's interesting, when we think about God longing more than anything else for a relationship with us, that he's not the only source that we have for him, meaning he's the essence of everything, of course. But we have two other groups of people that I think I tend to forget, and maybe you tend to forget, and I think I can say that in a lot of situations, some people don't even consider them. And one is the presence of angels, beings that are messengers from God, and they're everywhere. And everyone has one assigned to them, which I love. And if you were a Catholic going to Catholic schools in the 50s and 40s, you had to sit like this on your desk so your angel had someplace to sit. Great teaching tool. We all thought about our guardian angel. And the other is the dead, the so-called dead. I have learned so much from my intimate friends. The intimacy I have with the friends who are here alive has continued after they passed over, and I have a relationship with them, and I don't want to say this in any negative way about the great saints of the church. But when I pray to someone that I've held or that held me and touched me and helped me or gave birth to me, when I go to them and ask them for advice and direction, I feel so close to them. And so one of my intentions this morning is on this great feast of the guardian angels, is if you would join me in these couple levels of the intention. Number one, that your guardian angel is going to be there let's hope it's not too hard, interpreting what I'm saying. You know, there for clarification. One of the things someone said about me not too long ago was whenever you give a talk, you know, it's just one line or one phrase or something you say, I get one more little piece. And that's what I do, I think, when I talk and preach and teach is, it may be, well, I don't need to know what it is you're here to receive, but I know you'll receive it. And it may be a big thing that changes everything, and it may be a very little thing that just fits in. So your intention is to open your heart to my words, to trust in the angel that you brought with you. And when I'm giving you a few minutes to work this out in your head, because I'm going to shut up for a minute and let you think about this, but it's bring somebody who's died and ask them to be with you. So an angel on one side, somebody that loved you while you were alive on the other side. And then what we're asking for is just wisdom, that mysterious, powerful grasping of reality. Wisdom is that gift that when you have it, you're the smartest man in the room, smartest woman in the room. You know how to answer needs and you know how to make things happen. Wisdom. And what we're looking for, in my understanding of my life, if it's like yours, and it is, I know that, I just want to see what's real, know what's important, and be a part of whatever this thing is we're here to do, okay? So a little bit of quiet, a little bit of stillness. So in your own way, in your own words, in your own whatever you do when you're talking to the divine within you, in your heart, make this intention with me to receive what's being given and to be an instrument of giving it to the people around you. As you receive it, let it flow from your heart to the person next to you, across the room, we're like transmitters. You receive and then you send. You can't help but send what you receive. That's the danger of not doing your homework and growing up. You're sharing something that is either truthful or not. We give way too much credit for the words we speak as if that's all that we're doing when we're communicating. It's so much more than words. And by the way, I should stop using them so I can let you do this work of just stillness and quiet for just a few moments. And join me in that intention. Okay. One of the things I'd like you to give me permission to do while I'm doing this is if I don't know where I'm going to go next, I'll stop, and don't think that there's an age issue here. But it's just I want to go to the next thing. So let this be kind of reflective. Pretend like you're eating your brunch while I'm sitting there, or I'm eating my brunch while I'm not talking. But anyway, okay. Let's go to the beginning. The beginning of God's relationship with human beings. It's in the Bible. We have this incredible book called the Bible. When you think about the Bible, it's in two parts, an old and a new part. And I, like many people that are Catholic, grew up with just the New Testament. And one of the things, because I mentioned Vatican Council a few moments ago, one of the things the Vatican Council did is increase the number of readings that we're able to proclaim on Sundays so that more of the New Testament is available to preachers so that we can teach from it. When you think about it, for 2,000 years, the Catholic Church had a set of 52 sets of readings. So 52 short passages out of the New Testament were read. Well, 104. One was from the New Testament, the Gospels, and one was from the Epistles. So we heard a lot about the New Testament. But when Vatican Council came, not only did they increase that to 3 years instead of not one series of 52, but 3 series of 52. And then the next thing was they said, and add an Old Testament reading. Not that we didn't preach at times on the Old Testament for feast days and things, but not consistently. So what's fascinating to me about that is not having the Old Testament to preach on really limits one's understanding of the New Testament, because it's like when you realize the Old Testament starts and goes through basically 2,000 years, probably is a good amount of time from the time of the call of Abraham until Jesus. That's 2,000 years. If you go back further to when supposedly, not supposedly, but I mean, the supposedly is just, is this the right year? Because this is all guessed, not guessed, but they have a formula to do it. But I think it's about 1,400 years from Adam and Eve to Abraham, and then 2,000 to Jesus, and 2,000 since Jesus. Okay, just the reason I want to throw those ideas out, or those dates out, is because I want to see if I can give you a sense of how the evolution of human beings is an integral part. Knowing how we evolve and the times in which we were when these things were happening helps you understand the process that we're all engaged in our own journey of evolution towards who we fully are. So if you look at the story of humanity from Adam and Eve until, let's say, today, you'll see a process of evolution. And you'll see it in human race, and you see it also in the way God reveals himself in the Old Testament, particularly. So most of you know, I think, basically about the evolution of human nature, where it starts, where it ends up. I can do it really simply. The very lowest level of human nature, and you'll see it in the story of Adam and Eve, is basically human beings are very, very concerned about themselves. They want to know, they want to be safe, they want to have something to eat, they want to have shelter, they want to have somebody with them. That's the basic drive of human nature, self-survival, and they want to be in union with someone else. We learn that from the very early story of Adam and Eve. As it evolves, it moves into slightly higher levels, and we have to go through processes as we move along. But let's just say we move from self-centeredness slowly towards something where we consider the necessity of being in a good relationship with other people, because you're not just individuals, you have to live with other people, and that's the way the world evolves. And so if you're going to work with other people, you better have a way of understanding what's the best way to work with other people? Well, in the Ten Commandments, you have the best indication of what it takes to live in a community where the community flourishes. Tell the truth. Honor each other. Don't lie. Don't steal. Don't kill. Don't break promises. Don't be envious. Don't be competitive so much. Learn to live together. You go from isolation, me alone, then to community. And as that continues to evolve and move, you're going to end up not just concerned about the community because it helps you, it's there for you, you're there for it in a certain sense, but let's just say mostly they're there for you. Other people are there to help you. But then when you keep evolving, you end up becoming someone who enters into a world that goes something like this. I'm in this world because I've been given something that I've discovered is a unique gift. I have something that's uniquely mine. And I can use it in a way for my own benefit, but then, that doesn't seem to satisfy me enough. So what I need to do is move a little bit higher into my level of consciousness that God has created for me, the destiny that I have, that I want to use it to help other people. And then I'm giving my life constantly away, and I am the happiest I could ever be. From the lowest level, it's all about me, to the highest level, it's all about you, the others, the people around me. It's not hard to feel that in your own life, to know that. So let's take that image and go back to the very beginning, and I'm going to ask you to think about this. Think about the human race evolving, and think about God himself not changing and growing, but think about God revealing himself slowly to people so that they're able to grasp who God is. Who is he? The God that we believe in began revealing himself really with Abraham. That's when he really began to say, all right, I'm ready to come into the world and to work with human beings, and I need to do it in a communal form. I need somebody to form a community for me, okay? But before I go into Abraham, I want to go back a little bit further, 1,400 years, and talk about the story of Adam and Eve, because you heard that story probably when you were very, very young. God created a garden. In the garden, he decided he would God created the world. Did God exist before the world was created? Yes. Does that make a lot of sense to you, that God never, ever wasn't? When you figure that out, let me know, because it just doesn't, this part doesn't get it. How can something always be? Well, he's always been, okay? Well, where was he before the world was created? That was 4.5 billion years ago. Did God exist? Yeah, well, what was he doing? I don't know. But that's not the problem. That's not the issue, rather. The issue is, who is he? So all of a sudden, the first thing God reveals about himself is that he's a creator. He's an artist. He loves to make things. And so he starts creating this world. Supposedly, it was a big bang. Who knows? But basically, something happened, and matter was created, and then planets, and then all of a sudden life, and we have this long evolutionary process that took over a long, long period of time. Some people said, no, we created it all, boom, right away. Well, at least we say that about Adam and Eve. It doesn't matter how God created human beings as much as it matters that he is the source of everything. He created us. And the reason that's also so important is because he created us, guess what? Just like him. We are just like God. We're not perfect like God is, not all powerful like God is, but we look like him, we think like him, we feel like him. And so he begins this story of revealing human beings this way. It's a wonderful little story. And one of the ways in which it's been always interpreted is simply that human beings were given a commandment, a rule, a law, like they were throughout the Old Testament in their journey on from slavery to freedom, with Moses as their director. But what you're seeing when that process is taking place, you're seeing an evolution of human beings moving from a very simple, childlike state where they've been given a rule and a law and told not to break it. So most people believe that the sin of Adam and Eve that we all inherited was disobedience. And that means what? The most important thing you can do for God is obey everything he tells you to do. If there's anything I could get you to erase out of your mind, is that notion that the way we respond to God is by doing what he tells us to do. That's not it. And that's why Adam and Eve didn't do it. Because there's something in human nature that doesn't really believe that that's really the core of who we are, to be obedient servants. There's something more about life than just doing what you're told. It's a childlike relationship with a higher power when all you have to do is say, what do I do now? He tells you and then you do it. That's it. So in Adam and Eve's story, what we're seeing is a part of human nature that basically doesn't want to simply sit back and do what they're told. How do I read that, or how do I find that in the story? Well, basically, the figure that is speaking to Adam and Eve, tempting them not to do what tempting them to do something that God said, don't do it. Don't eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Why would God say that? What is he saying? Don't eat of the knowledge of good and evil. Isn't it a good thing to know what's right and wrong? That's not the temptation. Temptation is to determine what is right and wrong, to be the one that decides what's right and wrong. Human beings have a creative force inside of them, the same kind of creative force that's in God. And basically, we want to create something. We want to do something. That idea of being naked with this beautiful partner in this garden was not what human beings would say, this is heaven, this is wonderful. They were restless. They wanted to do something. They wanted to make something, just like God wanted to make something. So we see in this story a beautiful part of human nature. We want to be like the God that created us. We want to create something. But it's not, God is saying carefully, it's not that you're here to create a world in which you control it, you decide what it is, you make up all the rules and laws. That's the temptation that is at the heart of our resistance to what we're really here for and who God really is. He wants us to evolve into creatures like him, where we're able to make decisions based on the wisdom that he shares with us that create in us a force as powerful as God is in some ways, because we carry divinity in us, that brings life to the world. What does God want? What does God want to do right now in this room with you and me? He wants to pour something into you called life. It flows out of him. But in the process of God revealing who he is throughout the Old Testament, it seems clear that he doesn't want to do that directly, but he wants to do it through other people. That's why it has to be this evolutionary process that we watch in the Old Testament is always related to community, community, community. Nothing is more important than relationships. And so what we see in the Old Testament throughout is a God revealing slowly all the things that we need to understand and know in order to become who we are. And I'm just going to focus on one major part of the Old Testament that to me is the piece that is most essential for you to understand that's been given to you. Go back to the image of the temptation in the garden is to decide what's right and wrong. If that's one of the weaknesses of human beings, then in the process of the Old Testament, right at the heart of it, is this time when God enters into their life and says through Moses, I want to give them a law, a set of rules and laws, the 10 Commandments. So simple. 3 of them just talk about your relationship with God. Believe that he's real. Listen to him. Keep the Sabbath. Doesn't mean go to church every Sunday. That's not the major issue. That's a wonderful thing to do. But it means spend time with him. And then whatever you do with this power that God has given you, don't use it in vain. Don't use it in a way that would fill you with power that you can use that power over somebody else. So in your relationship with God, believe in him. Allow him to speak to you and let his words penetrate into your heart and become part of you. And don't ever do anything that would harm anybody. And then that's, amplified in the rest of the 10 Commandments. Don't lie, don't steal, don't cheat, don't break promises. So I'm just taking you to the Old Testament as a process of the evolution of a human being who grows up, has a rule and law like the 10 Commandments. Your parents gave you rules and laws. Schools give you rules and laws. The world gives you rules and laws. But they ultimately are leading to something much more. There are 300 references in the Old Testament to something that's coming. Something that's coming. And what's coming is incarnation. Incarnation. What is it? It's the evolution of all those human beings throughout that history that are growing and becoming more like what God was wanting to be until one becomes so close, so ready to receive the fullness of what this whole thing is about, God dwelling inside of you, divinity living inside of you. This man was ready, and he received it, and his name is Jesus. So what's he about? I don't know how many of you are evangelical in the room, but I know that when I listen to evangelicals, the words that you hear over and over and over again is Jesus, 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 Jesus. Jesus is my Savior. Jesus is everything. Growing up as a Catholic, that's exactly what I felt too. Jesus, Jesus. He saved me from my sins. He did everything. Jesus is my friend. So much of the Old Testament, you see a God who is still working through the process of giving people what they need when they need it. And there was a time when we weren't anywhere near being able to make a decision on our own, and God had to be presented to human beings in the Old Testament as a taskmaster. He blessed those who were good. He cursed those who were bad. If you were good, he loved you. If you were bad, he killed you. That's the Old Testament. It's frightening when you think of it. I remember as a child listening to the story of, after Adam and Eve made their mistake and they were sent out of the garden. By the way, they were sent out of the garden because They wanted to go out of the garden, and God let them go out of the garden because they said, we don't like this place where we don't have anything to do. We want to go and find out who we are. We want to go and do something. So I never get this idea that they were kicked out of the garden, but that they were sent out of the garden. There's one line in that story that always, for some reason, it's not in the scriptures that we preach from, and I don't know why they left out one line. And maybe it's because they wanted everybody to know if you don't obey what God says, you are in deep trouble and you're kicked out. But it's this: what did he do before he kicked them out? He went and found some animals, got their skins, and sewed clothes for them. God sitting there sewing clothes for Adam and Eve so they can go to college in the Northwest. So, I mean, think of it. It's beautiful. Does that sound like he's disgusted with them? No, he's smiling, Thank God they didn't want to stay here their whole life. They want to be engaged in what I'm created them for: evolution, change, growth. So this man, Jesus, comes along. And the thing I love about focusing on him, not as my Savior, but as the model of the one. No, he's the model for us of our relationship with the one who saves us. Who saves us? Jesus the man or Jesus the God? Well, I have a really hard time understanding Jesus as God. How does that work? What did Jesus do with it? He pocketed his divinity, it said. He downplayed it. He said, no, I'm here. I want you to see me as a human being. That's what I want more than anything else. Don't look at me as if I'm God. He didn't want people worshiping him. He wanted people who would listen to him, spend time with him, receive what he was offering them. But he did all of that as a human being, what? Filled with divinity. Filled with divinity. So think about it. God creates human beings, puts them in a place where they begin to live, exist. They reveal that they want to do more than just be taken care of, and they move and move till they get to the place where it's time for them to where human nature is now ready to receive the fundamental core relationship that we're made for. Intimacy with God. If there's anything I want to really talk about today is intimacy with God. God living in you, God living in me, living in our heart. So let's go back to this image of Jesus as the human being walking the earth, filled with divinity. The thing that we know about his divinity is that he never sinned. Anybody else never sinned in the world? Mary. And what do we know about Mary, and what do we know about Jesus in terms of their sinlessness? Sin, the description of sin, is missing the mark. If there's anybody in this room that has a focus on sin that says it's the worst thing that can ever happen to you, will never grow. Sins are part of the way in which we grow and develop and change. Sin does not separate us from God. No. Mistakes is the way I'm describing sins right now. Mistakes don't separate us from God any more than a child who's growing up in your family who breaks something that you love, who poops in the wrong place or whatever it does, whatever they do, that does not separate you from them. So God isn't upset with our mistakes and our failures because they teach us so much. But the only thing you know about Mary in terms of her sinlessness, because we know a lot about Jesus' life, but Mary's life, all we know is that she did this thing when God invited her into a role that she was to take on that was so beyond her imagining. She was able to say very clearly, this makes no sense to me, and I'm scared to death. I don't understand this. I don't know how I'm going to deal with this. I'm going to look like a prostitute or whatever. I'll live with that probably the rest of my life. If you lived in a little tiny town like Nazareth, everybody knew everybody's business. One of the things I love thinking about is that Jesus and Mary grew up as outcasts, socially and spiritually in a way. Nothing, by the way, nothing is better in life than being an outcast. You have to develop something that says, this is me. Not just that I belong to the group, but this is me. And they had to do that. And so Jesus himself, back to Mary. Mary's surrender to the fact that this is what I have to do, that's an image I want you to feel is about sinlessness. I surrender to what's real, what's true, what has to be. The reason I say that is because where do we see Jesus absolutely in his humanity shining like an incredible beacon to say, if you don't do this, you don't understand me. You don't understand who Jesus is. And that is when it was time for him to be a public figure. Think about Jesus' life. I love thinking about this. 90% of his life was private. We don't know anything hardly about it at all. 3 short years out of 30 years, he ended up talking, directing, teaching, engaged in something. Now he's talking to me now. Is that me or? I don't know who that is. Anyway. And when it came to being prepared all those years for his work, now think of him now as a human being, not as God, but as a full human being, just like you, just like me, with the same struggles, the same mistakes, the same ranting and raving at people who aren't who they're supposed to be that he did. He came to a point where he was clearly in trouble in his public ministry because he was taking such a severe stand against those that ran the institution called religion. Religion killed Jesus. We know that. We all know that. Not religion in its purest form, but the negative side of religion, which has everything to do with control and power over people, rules and laws over people. The most dangerous place any of us can be is power over people. It's where we do our greatest damage. But Jesus, when he was in that moment of his life, when he was trying so desperately to open people's minds to a way of seeing his Father that was radically different than what was being taught by the temple, he found himself getting in trouble because he did this irresponsible thing. He started healing everybody. He knew it was wrong. I mean, for his ministry, I mean, he actually would be able to, I mean, he could do this. It was almost like he did it reluctantly at times because, I mean, sometimes he just did it because it just overflowed outside of him. By the way, we have the same power to heal. But when he really would get in a situation where he would do it and he knew it was going to be the one thing, you could always write off a Messiah because there were thousands of Messiahs throughout history before Jesus. And there's many of them after Jesus. But the thing that he, sorry, I'm worried about the microphone, so I said, wonder what's wrong with the microphone? That breaks my train of thought. I'm sorry. All right, but back to Jesus. So he starts healing people in a way that he said, this is going to get me in trouble because they can write me off as the Messiah. And he didn't mind being written off by the church. He had to have the 12 guys around him, the 12 people that he wanted to infuse with this wisdom and this knowledge, and that's the way the whole thing started. He didn't make a major difference in the institution at all. In fact, he irritated the institution so much that they had to get rid of him because they couldn't write him off. Blind people seeing, that's a hard one to write off. How about a dead person coming back? Oh, no, we can't do that. Can't get rid of him. And he begged people at times, don't tell anybody about this. But they did. So this is all leading up to one simple point. Mary showed her sinlessness by trusting in what God had planned for her. Let it be done to me as you say. Jesus, on the other hand, is moving, growing, changing as a human being. He wanted so desperately to be successful. He had an ego like you have and I have. He had doubts and fears like we have. Not so much doubts in anything other than his effectiveness. Not that God wasn't part of his life, but he was doing all this work as a human being filled with divinity. If he were God doing it, he could have changed everything. He could have he could have changed the mind of every Pharisee if he worked out of God, out of his divinity. Because God can do anything he wants. But he didn't. He worked on it just like you and I work on it. And that's why he's the model of everything we're supposed to be. Jesus is not the source of our salvation. He's the model for who we should be, because he had within himself this divinity that could do anything. And so he was told by divinity, oh, by the way, son, it's not going to turn out like the way you thought. Now, how can God say to Jesus, it's not the way you thought, unless you see Jesus as one like you? And he said, it's going to change. You're not going to be as successful as your humanity wanted you to be. By the way, it's going to turn pretty dark, and you're going to end up having to give in to evil. Now, imagine the God that created us in the Old Testament, and all those years was always evil, evil, destroy it. It's wrong. It has no value. If we could just get rid of evil, we'd have a wonderful world. And how does the world being saved? Giving in to evil. Give in to darkness. What? I want to get rid of everything that's dark. I want to get rid of all pain, all suffering, all disease, all problems, all psychoses. No, those have to stay. Give in to them. And so the sinlessness of Jesus is so clearly stated to us, or given to us, in the story of the Garden of Gethsemane. The garden. Father, I don't want to do this. I really don't. It's clearly clear it's going south, you know. He was going back to Jerusalem. He was a rock star. When he got into the city, they went nuts for him, you know, big parade. And he knew in his heart that he already had the word from God that this is going to be your end. And you're going to be humiliated. You're going to be ridiculed. You're going to be exposed as a phony. You're going to be crucified, stripped naked in front of everybody. I mean, it's the worst case scenario for somebody who wants to achieve something so dear to his human heart, and being told that you have to fail at all of it. And if you can do that, then you'll save the world. Save the world. So he said no. And then God said no. Then he would go and look for his disciples, his buddies that would support him in this. Sounds like a human being to me, not like a divine figure. Goes back and prays some more. No. He says no again. And then the story is he sweats blood, and he falls on the ground and finally says, okay. And you know there's a phrase that people often use that I can't use in public. When it comes to that moment, you just say, and change the world. And what has he changed? He changed two things for me in my world of my Catholic faith. When I listened and paid close attention to that whole thing I just described, he makes me really rethink what it is that I believe that I'm here to accomplish. and how I'm going to do it. And it's not going to be doing it perfectly. That's not the goal. But the goal is going to be an instrument of whatever God wants me to be, and to ultimately, when he's using me, I want to be as generous and as free as I can be to allow the divinity in me to flow from me to you, from me to someone else, from all that. I want to be able to be that, but at the same time, I've got to somehow understand that this is not this gift I have, this flow coming through me, is not me. It's me allowing you, God, to do it through me. And how do I stay separate from that egocentric side of all of us that wants to be the source, or wants to have a place in the world that has meaning and purpose? I've got, how much time do I have on this?
5 minutes, Don.
Oh, okay. Okay, I'm going to save that for the second part. I want you to feel with me right now that this struggle that Jesus had is the struggle that you have. If you've been brave enough to embrace it and live it and work it out, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And I guarantee you most everybody here is doing that. There's a lot of people in the world that just don't want to bother with it. It's really a lot of trouble to be thinking about me being more than me that I could ever be, that I can actually heal people, I can change people, that I have angels and dead people all around me helping me, that I need to be sensitive to all that and engaged in all that at the same time. I'm a human being with all kinds of psychoses and neuroses and problems and background and damaged and broken. How do you balance all of that stuff? So, how can I summarize this and give you some kind of... I was talking to somebody before we began in the front, and we were talking about the idea of God dwelling in this tabernacle inside of you that the Vatican Council made very clear to everybody, that we have this source of wisdom and this truth inside of us, and how helpful that was to him, and how helpful it was to me too, but I don't think about it as much as I used to. But I just want to close with just reminding you that you have the same divinity inside of you that God placed in Jesus. The same divinity. Are you capable of what he was in terms of absolutely surrendering 100% so that the divinity and humanity in him was so intense and so close that he is God? That isn't our destiny. But what is our destiny is that we have Jesus as the model, not as the Savior. And when Jesus was with his disciples those last couple of weeks, and he was saying things to them that drove them kind of crazy. They didn't know what he was talking about, but the Last Supper is the best one I can talk about just to close this part of the program, and that is, he said to them, look, I don't know how to convince you that God is living inside of you. I don't know how I can get your imagination to believe in this, but I'll tell you, I'll give you a way of thinking about it. See that food on the table? See that wine over there? Well, if you eat that food and you drink that wine, it's inside of you, right? And the food gives you energy and strength, and the wine can take off the edge and make you feel a lot happier. And it calms you. Well, just like that, I want you to think about taking me inside of you. I want you to eat me and drink me. Now that, I'm used to that just because I'm a Catholic and I've heard that all my life, but I can't imagine hearing that for the first time. And what he's saying is, And then he goes on to explain it, because if you'll take me, just who I am, if you become like I am, which is your destiny, when I get into you, guess what I bring? I bring divinity into you. Now, why would it be so important that Jesus would be the means to bring divinity into someone? Try the Old Testament. Go back to the Old Testament. Humanity, sinful, dirty, God. Distance, this is as close as they could get. They were so separate. The thought of God coming into a sinful person, because God was so opposed to sin in the Old Testament, he would destroy it. So the thought of God coming into somebody who's imperfect because he can't stand imperfection, an Old Testament image that we have to get past. He loves our brokenness. He looks at it with incredible compassion and empathy, but that was never revealed in the Old Testament, but it was in Jesus. And so what he's saying is, if you can eat me and drink my blood, if you can take my flesh and body into you, the Father will come to you, and if the Father's in you, then you've done exactly what you're here to do, to live just like I lived and do what I did. And you know what? If you can do what I did, you can do better than I did, because you're just like me in this world. I have never thought of myself growing up as a Catholic that I was like Jesus in that sense. How did I imagine it? Being good, being kind, being nice. Follow Jesus, do what he did. But I never thought of myself as intimately connected to divinity as I do now. And you know what? In the second talk, I want to talk to you about what that does to human beings when you really feel it. Because if you're not expecting something like the Garden of Gethsemane, you're missing the point. And I always thought if God came into me and lived inside of me, I'd be perfect. And I would be able to do everything wonderfully. And everybody would love me. It's funny. Sorry. Okay. Let's close this by thanking our angel that was sitting right next to you for his presence, her presence. I don't know, they are sort of his, hers. And thank the person who sat with you that has seen what I'm trying to help you see. I love the fact that when you know someone has died, you can always look at them and say, here's the question we often use in my small community of people that worship with me on Sunday. And it's, hey, show me what you see. Show me what you know. It's going to be amazing what happens when we die and we see all of this so clearly. And yet we're not separated from a understanding. It'll never be as full as when we die, but we can get something that is so transformative when we have it. So anyway, that's the end of part one. Thank you. Break time. There's great stuff outside. And we can meet at a tavern later and drink. Okay. Whoa.
Hello, everyone. We are going to get started with our second part here of the show, and I just wanted to say thank you first for coming, joining us. It's so nice to be back in Fort Worth and to see you all here today. Thanks to all of you who are actually joining us virtually, too. We're able to live stream this. So anyway, I just wanted to give you an update. We've got a major development happening with Pastoral Reflections Institute. We were able to expand to 9 new markets on the radio program. So our goal is to get Pastoral Reflections, our radio show, across the country. And with some very generous donors that have come our way, this has been able to kick off this year. And so tomorrow is our launch date on about 9 new stations, and including Sirius XM. So we hope that you will tune in. And as you know, too, I know many of you are longtime listeners, and we're listener supported, and so we do appreciate your donations and continued support as we continue to grow, and really, we're about to take off. That's what I feel like. So first of all, I should have introduced myself. I'm Madeline Sis, and I'm the executive director, and I have been working with Don since 2018. So this organization has really taken a huge shift, and along with our board of directors, very dedicated board, we are looking to the future of how do we have a legacy with Monsignor Don's message. And we're really grateful for the longtime listeners and loyalty of our Dallas-Fort Worth crew, and we're looking forward to bringing in the whole country into this family. So thank you so much.
Oh, good. They came back. Okay. All right. You just heard about some things happening in my ministry, and I noticed you applauded, and that's nice. I haven't applauded very much about it. And I thought I'd share a little bit of that with you because well, if we're having lunch together, it was brunch, now it's lunch. The line you would have just told me, well, how do you feel about everything, Don? How's it going? Are you excited? And I would say, yeah, I think. But I want to talk about something that affected Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane and affects most of us. And I think you'll know what I'm talking about if you ever wake up at 3:30 in the morning and can't go back to sleep. It's called the critic. You know the critic? St. Francis used to talk about having bouts with the devil. And when I listen to his description, I say, I've had those, you know. It didn't seem like the devil to me. But evil is a really strange thing. To have this image of a man in a red suit with a tail and things like that, it doesn't quite get to me. But there is something that God has given to human beings. In the beginning, he was there. It's still there. It's never going to go away. And it's what I would call the thing that makes us who we are. It's called suffering. Suffering. And suffering is not pain necessarily, because suffering, like one of the lines that I used to wonder why Jesus said, "Suffer the children to come to me." He didn't like children? No. Suffer means to allow it. So what's happened to me in terms of this event in life, this change that's come about, I didn't really much, I have this, Madeline's right, I have an incredible board of trustees, and I've never had, my first board of trustees was a wonderful set of close friends that were well known in the city, and I thought if I have names that people have heard before, it give me credibility. So I had a wonderful group of people, but they were so busy and so stretched thin on other boards throughout the city that they weren't able to do a whole lot, and I didn't even know what to ask them to do. But one of those board members is the one that I think has been the most aggressive in my own personal growth into this ministry, when he would come to me and say, you know, you're doing way too much. When I used to do, when I still do retreats, one of the wonderful things that I've been able to do every year is take 20 people to Italy and take them through some beautiful, beautiful places in Tuscany and Umbria, and share with them the beauty of creation there and the beauty of their food and their culture and their music. And it's like a retreat that I've always thought was kind of the opposite of what you think of with another kind of retreat, which also is very valuable, where you go and you have a chair and a desk and a bed and you eat, you know, not that great of food, and you don't drink, and you This is about drinking and eating and enjoying and singing, and it's like, this is the world that God has created. It's abundant, it's abundance. But if you thought about life being just all about abundance, you're going to miss one of the most important ingredients, and that's suffering. Allowing things to be where they are. So let's go back to my image of when I heard all this news. Well, let me go back to the person who was very instrumental in caring for me. He said, look, you're doing way too much stuff, so you should be focusing on your work, your content, and get a personal assistant, get somebody to run the office, and get a board that's a working board. Build a studio in your house so you can record from your own house. Have an office there for PRI so it's not in your guest bedroom. And develop this thing, into something much bigger. And I thought, oh yeah, that'd be great, And then this thing happens recently where they say, okay, now guess what? You're going to be on the thing called the Catholic Channel. Anybody ever listen? How many people in here listen to the Catholic Channel? Couple. It's crazy. It's really fun. I mean, there's EWTN, which is a kind of conservative Catholic, very Orthodox group. And when you listen to the Catholic channel, it's kind of like, I remember when AM radio used to have a bunch of announcers that would come on and they'd talk to each other and then play music and they'd laugh and tell you what they did last weekend. And that's the Catholic channel. It's kind of really laid back and kind of casual. But when I found out I was going to be on that and all these other stations, and I was listening to my guide, the one I'm telling you about, who said, you got to take care of yourself, I'd say, well, this is going to be so much easier. I just have to do my show. And then what happened to me, and I'm just going to share this because it's so fresh, because whatever I'm going to describe to you is probably the worst it's ever been yesterday. And I just said, oh, God, I wish I didn't have to go to Fort Worth on Saturday. Not because I didn't want to be here with you, but my frame of mind was the antithesis of what I wanted it to be. Because I was filled with so much self-doubt. Raging. And I thought, this is crazy. I've just been given some kind of affirmation. They send my radio program out to these stations and they listen to it and they say, yeah, we'd like this guy. So why wouldn't I feel I just feel like, wow, I'm really, really doing a good job. And then I had a couple things that happened to me just in the last couple of days. I got a phone call from a guy that not a young man anymore, but a man who called me to tell me about one of his friends that I knew. His name was Mike, had COVID and was pretty bad in the hospital. And he said, God, I haven't talked to you in so long. I said, how long has it been? And he said, I don't know, 50 years. He said, but you were our 8th grade teacher when you were first ordained. And he said, there were 2 other priests there, St. Monica's. I don't know if anybody was in St. Monica's back in those days, but there were 2 priests with me. One was Father Mills and one was Father McTammany, and they were in their 60s and they were hurting, really hurting, because of a thing called the Vatican Council, which turned their worlds upside down. Pastors back then could do almost anything they wanted to in the way they ran their parish because they were the boss. And the Vatican Council said, no, you don't run your parish by yourself. You have to have lay advisors from your parish. What? Ask my parishioners where we should spend money? You're kidding. No, Turn around and face the people and speak, not Latin, which I could do in about 8 minutes, the whole Mass. Kidding. But, it was such a change for them. They weren't happy. And I was young and I was filled with just nothing but a desire to get engaged in this incredible thing called the priesthood. And they gave me a class of students and I just felt they were my friends, I've always had that gift. When I work with people, I feel like they're my friends, not just people I work for, but friends. But anyway, I was, this young man said, when you, back then, those other priests, we would talk about it among ourselves in the 8th grade. They said, when the other pastors first of all, back to those days, daily mass for every child in school, daily mass, imagine. And so they were there, and they would get me one day, and Father Mills another day, and Father McTammon, and they said, all I can tell you is you made sense and they didn't. Now that's not, makes me feel really good, but, but that just happened a couple of days ago. And then I went to an event for the University of Dallas 2 nights ago, and this young man came up, and he was a student when I was there, so that was at least 35 years ago. And he just walked up to me and put his arms around me and just held me for a few minutes, and he whispered in my ear, he said, my marriage that you did, I knew this already because I knew his wife, his former wife, but they divorced. And when he was holding me, he said, I knew that the only way I could get through this thing that she left me was to forgive whatever caused it. And as he was still holding me pretty long, and he said, you taught me how to forgive. And I'll never forget that. Now I have both those experiences in my head. Got it? And I get up on Monday, this past week, Tuesday, all that had happened already, and it was filled with this raging, I have nothing to say, and I'm a phony. Now, it wasn't like I thought about it, like, no, I believed it. I believed it. So much so that I had to do a program the next day. And unfortunately, the new program has to have no music in it because of royalty problems with all the stations. So it's a little bit of a different format, but I got into it. And the minute I started preaching, the first sentence, one of the gifts I do have, I can hear myself, and I can edit myself as I'm talking. It's almost like I can hear myself talking. That's a blessing. If you want to know what the next thing you're going to say is, it's a curse if you're judging every single word that comes out of your mouth. And that's exactly what I did. And when I preach and when I teach, when I get up, I feel a flow working through me. And when that's going, I have no sense of time whatsoever. And it feels so good. It's like, I don't know, it's the thing I was made to do. That's probably why it feels so good. When you're doing what you're meant to do, there's a effortlessness about it. But I thought to myself, why did this happen? Why was that? And I listened to the homily yesterday. I went back and I said, was it as bad as I thought? And I was listening to it, and of course I was still in this mode. Yeah, it was worse than I thought it was, So I said, well, I've got to redo that. What am I going to do that? I don't know. I've got too many things going on. I got this, I got that. Kind of a thing I'm sure you need to know about me, but I wanted to retile my bathroom because I had some important guests coming. And they took the tile up, and the floor was just water damage. And they have to completely redo the foundation underneath the house. It's crazy, just too many things, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so all of that was going on in my head. I've got too much to do, and I'm no good. All right, I sat there with my logical brain working, saying, this is stupid and this is ridiculous. Why are you doing this? Why are you doing this to yourself? And I could think of myself, okay, I said, well, then who am I? What is my Achilles heel? Or, what is it that I'm vulnerable to? Y'all know the Enneagram, many of you? Okay. You know threes? Yeah, sad, isn't it? Yeah. The Enneagram is an ancient tool to help you understand basic human personalities. It's a circle. There's 9 basic personalities. And basically, without going into it, and it's a wonderful tool if you would like to take a test and find out your basic personality type. First time I did it, it was just terrifying to me because I took a test and they said, you're probably a 4 or a 3 or somewhere in there. And I read what a 3 was and closed the book. And I said, how did they know? How did they know? Because it points out your weakness primarily. The weakness of you is this. And guess what my weakness is? Guess what my gift is? My weakness is I love to perform. Ta-da! Performance. Performance. And what is performance, you know? Well, you're getting up in front of people and you want them to applaud, right? So you'll be whatever they want you to be, right? Or you'll try. So the shadow of being a performer is hypocrisy. You'll be whoever anybody wants you to be, you know, and that's my shadow. So that means the biggest issue for me is pleasing the people that are looking at me, pleasing them, being extraordinarily good at what I do. Sounds like a real virtue in a way. Be your best. But the problem with it is it leaves out one crucial reason that I'm here. No, one crucial element that has to be in what I'm doing right now, and that is not performing so that you like me, but it's being authentic. Authentic. Authenticity is the gift of a 3. Hypocrisy, or acting as if you're someone you're not, is our shadow. Okay. So what happened to me was my critic showed up. And my critic knows me exactly. He knows exactly my weaknesses, and it goes for them. And I can't quite understand exactly, other than maybe for this talk, maybe for a lot of other reasons, but why did this thing happen so intensely? I mean, I was in such a bad place the last couple of days that I don't remember being in that bad a place. By that, I mean I lost every shred of self-confidence. Gone. I'm a hypocrite. I don't have anything really to say. None of this is logical to me, but it's what I was doing with. Now, when was I doing this? At 4 in the morning, 3 in the morning, 7, you know, in that half-conscious state. But the panic was real. The panic was real. I remember once flying a 747 back from Italy one year, and we were flying over what I think we were looking down, and look at these round clouds and that little hole in the middle is turning, you know. Well, we were flying over a hurricane, and all of a sudden this plane went like this, and it must have been caught in the downdraft, and we went straight down like this for probably 3 seconds, but enough time for the stewardess to slide by my seat, and the trays slide by, you know, it was over. I remember sitting there just terrified that this plane isn't stable. It's not holding me up. That's what it felt like at 3:30 in the morning these last couple of nights. There's nothing holding me up. I'm not able to do this. And then what do I do if I can't do it? So I sat there and I laid there and I said, okay, I tried a couple of things. Shut up to the boys. Shut up. I can do it. I'm fine. Shut up. Use a couple of explicit, you know, the other things. Something off, something off. It didn't work. Did not work. So I said, this is ridiculous. So last night, I called a friend who's he's a therapist. His name's Tom. And I said, Tom, I don't know what's going on, but I am really scared. I don't know. I haven't been this way since I was, you know, first ordained or whatever. I don't get it. He said, well, you know it is. And I said, what? He said, it's the critic. You know that. He said, well, of course the critic's there. And I said, what do you mean, of course the critic's there? He said, because you've just been affirmed. Excuse me, that doesn't make sense. I've just been affirmed and now the critic shows up that tells me I'm no good. He said, don't you get it? It doesn't want you to do anything great, important, significant, powerful. It hates it, and it knows exactly where you're vulnerable. And you're vulnerable in the area of perception, how people perceive you. So guess who is the perceiver of my work? Somebody just told me 50 years ago, you were such a significant part. Somebody else at the University of Dallas, you taught me this that helped me with my life. All this affirmation. So where is it all coming from? Inside here. It was like in me, this thing that said, I am not successful. And then I was laying there, and then I was talking to Tom, step back to that. He said, well, just know that this is an affirmation indirectly that you are being tested, and if you go through this, but don't get rid of it, if you'll go through this, it'll work. It'll do its work, because what the critic doesn't realize is that if he pushes too hard or she pushes too hard, she shoots herself in the back in a sense, because if you can accept the pain of it, just stay with it. Stay with it. And watch what happens on the other side of it. And I started crying on the phone last night because I could feel the wisdom in it. I felt like, this so-and-so is going to take me down, and it's going to ruin when I say I didn't want to be here, I was afraid it would just ruin my talk. It would ruin what I'm trying to do this morning. I get up here and anyway, so last night about 3:30 in the morning, I was lying there, and I thought I'd gotten ahead of it, and it just came at me like I don't ever remember it more intense than it was this morning at 3:30. Thank God I had a little melatonin in the bed, next to me, but I finally went back to sleep. But when I was in it, I just stayed in it. I said, okay, I didn't say get out of here, I didn't do anything. I just felt it. Okay, that means that I have lost whatever gift I have, and I'll never get it back. Okay, I can live with that. It shifted. I woke up this morning, I had more energy than I've had in months, it seemed like. I just felt great. I thought, what is that thing that suffering brings that I tend, I think I've make my point, I wanted to share that just because it's where I am, and it's what I've gone through, and it's what I'm feeling, and anyway, that's the beginning of the second part. Okay, so I've got my confidence back. Oh, thanks. Well, I didn't. Another performance, well done. Okay. It is. Okay, let's go, because that's exactly what Mary did, what Jesus did. It's amazing. Okay. All right, let's go back to what I'm praying you leave this place with, this time with me with, the time with the person you brought from the other side and the angel that's right there with you. I want you to leave here with an understanding and a conviction of this thing that Jesus did on this earth that is what you're here to do. And I love one of the comments I got during the break was, if you say I can do that, why is it that when I see somebody sick and I ask God to heal them, they don't get up and walk out of the hospital? And of course, she didn't mean it that maybe literally, but of course that's not going to be the way it works. It ruined Jesus' ministry. Can you imagine if you could actually do things like that? I've fantasized about it as a priest younger. I said, well, when I'll be a priest, I could go in and I could do these things. And what would it be like to do a funeral and actually in the middle of the funeral bring the person up out of the coffin and present them back to the people? Wouldn't that be really cool? Maybe that was when I was a lot younger. I hope it was. Anyway, but no, seriously. You can't. That's not what it is. It's the ability to believe with all your heart that when you are engaged in this presence of God, divinity in you, He is in charge, and He's the one that is going to determine exactly what it is you're able to bring to somebody else. And if you look at the miracles of Jesus, the thing that's fascinating about them, because I hadn't thought about this very much, but what did He do when He was healing? What were His main areas that He healed people in? What diseases was He especially good at? Leprosy was one. Demons was another. But the rest of it was, you don't see very clearly. Let me eyes that don't see, I'll make them see. Ears that don't hear, I'll enable them to hear. Hands that don't do the work, I'll make your hands strong. Your legs, it was cripples, it was withered hands, it was eyes, ears, tongues that could speak. What is all that? Being fully who you are. The greatest gift that God wants to give to you and to me, and what I expect Him to give to me through other people, and I expect to be able to give it to others through other people, is the ability to become fully who I am meant to be. That is so different than being perfect, or being without sin, or being without dark nights in the middle of the night losing hope in who I am and what I do. We are healers. We do it, but we're not in charge of how it works. Nothing is more clear about the life of Jesus, that Jesus, the man, was not in charge of how his ministry was going to go, how successful it was in the eyes of those around him. In fact, basically, the disciples never really got it from Jesus. Think about 3 years of having somebody work with you. Can you imagine being with me for 3 years, listening to me talk like this? No kidding. No, but I mean, imagine, Jesus was with him for 3 years. They witnessed all these things happening, and they still didn't grasp it. What does that say? Is it grasp? You can't say, is it possible for our minds to grasp this whole thing? I don't think so. Not just naturally out of our human nature, but how did the disciples eventually figure it out? Something happened to them. It wasn't their work figuring out how it works. It was something happening to them after Jesus died on the cross, which did this shift in how do you describe what happened when Jesus died on a cross? It's called crucifixion. What does it mean? Let me hold that thought for a second. I'll get back to it. But I'll tell you what it affected, how it changed things. Something was able to enter into human beings that had never been able to enter in before. It's called divinity. It's called being anointed. It's called Pentecost. And when those people were together after Jesus died and Jesus appears to them again, which must have been terrifying, but even the appearance of Jesus back again did not change their understanding fully of who they were going to be called, who they were called to be and what they were able to do. It had to happen by this miraculous outpouring of Spirit that went from God's heart into their hearts. It was like a flame of fire, and it burned out everything that was impure, and it enlightened their entire being so they could see and feel something that was beyond human nature. Human nature infused with divinity. The infusion is so intense, just like it was divine and human Jesus, that whole notion of divinity and humanity being so close. When you are living in God, not with God, not for God, when you're in God, that unity is so close, you're not going to be able to act like, hey, God, I need you to do this. Fix that over there. Do it. It's not. It's so much more mysterious. It's like this power of God living inside of you. This divinity is connected to your very essence, your capacity as a human being for two things. Well, I'll say it's one thing. Love, another way to say that is compassion, empathy. You feel with someone. You know the difference between compassion and empathy. Compassion is a sense that I know that must be painful. You see somebody going through something and you feel drawn to wanting to help them. Empathy is a little different. Empathy is a word actually that wasn't invented till 1912. It's a German word originally. And it means you actually are experiencing what they're experiencing. It's a deeper level of compassion. So this divinity inside of you is not going to feel like a power that you can call upon and zap people with it. It's just so integrated into your very being that when you are feeling something, needing, wanting, longing for something for someone else, divinity is flowing through that in a way that you don't even know. But I think there's something so beautiful and valuable about expecting it, knowing it's there, but you'll sort of forget about it. Otherwise, you go around and go, You know, when people have to say something to you constantly about, no, well, I mean, I'm not the greatest fan of religion, as you can maybe tell. But what I'm saying about that is not religion, not the essence of it. But when it's oversimplified and I don't know how to use the word. When it's out of balance, when it's too much about the person being the instrument of God going to, you know, let me bless you, let me, you know, when I read something or heard something once, you know, the problem with going around telling everybody when they tell you something good, you say, oh, you're so blessed, you're so blessed, you're so blessed. Somebody else comes up and said, I just lost my job and you're so cursed, you know. You don't say that. But it implies that, you know, when you say you're blessed because something's good. You are who you are when you're good, and when you're bad, you are who you are. When you have divinity flowing through you, you don't look different, you don't really act that different. When people change their voice and they act like they're, you know, spiritual or something, it just feels like it's performance. Guess who's very sensitive to that? Me. Feels phony. So what I want you to feel is this thing that happened to the disciples, that they went out and they did the most extraordinary things. And many people have asked me, why can't I do those extraordinary things? Well, those things were done to make a point so that you realize what anointing really means. It means that you have the power that God gave to Jesus to enable him to do something that changed everything. And you participate in that, and you're part of this amazing work of the evolution of consciousness of the world. And when you engage in this work, you are accomplishing amazing things without knowing it. And I don't think you're supposed to know it. Does that make sense? Otherwise, it gets to be, I don't know, too much about you or me. So let's go back and look at what happened on the cross, because crucifixion is just a fascinating event. You know the word crucible, what it means? A crucible? A crucible is a vessel. Usually it's made out of stone, or it's cut out of stone. But you pour metals into it, hot molten metals, and you take two forms of metal that each have a certain amount of strength, but when you put them together, they become even stronger than either one of them. That's what happened on the cross. Two powerful things came together, and each of them became more effective. And it's hard to talk about God becoming more effective. But before crucifixion, it wasn't possible that God could dwell inside a human being and work within them the way he works within you and me. So this coming together on this cross was the humanity, the horizontal line of Jesus, open, receptive, suffering, receiving, vulnerable, and this divinity that was shooting down, coming down from heaven. The heart's right in the center. And this divinity and humanity came together when this God-man Jesus surrendered and suffered to what? Reality, the way things are. Truth is so crucial a goal in Christianity because it's the thing that saves you. Being a Catholic, being a believer in a religion does not save you automatically, and it's not even required for salvation. The Holy Father said very recently, because he also was imbued with the Vatican Council, I think, as many people are, and they have a different view of the church than sometimes the institution teaches. But you don't have to be baptized to be saved. You have to believe in God to be saved. You have to believe in the truth. You have to seek the truth. Be who God called you to be. Be for other people. That's the essence of salvation. But if it's religion that gets, religion can become something other than what is at the core of what I'm trying to share with you is this intimacy you have with divinity that makes God even more effective and you even more effective in the world, because God somehow planned his role in this world not to work directly with you as much to work indirectly through someone else. Does that make sense? God more likely will give you something you need through someone else rather than just zap you. Because that's why we live in community. That's why relationships are so crucial. That's why you marry the person that you are so different from and you have to work it out. No. I like it hot. I like it cold. No, but seriously, it's true. That idea of struggle, conflict, is in the whole notion of the crucifixion. Jesus made peace with the thing that he surrendered to before he went through that action of the crucifixion, but it was his action of surrendering to doing it as it is written that gave him the power to radically change the relationship between humans and the God that created us. And that happened just 2,000 years ago, and we've been around for at least, well, who knows, millions of years? Or if you follow the Bible, his history thing, 5,400 years ago is when human beings appeared on this planet. You know, it's interesting when you think about where were human beings when this whole story that's written in this book called the Bible, which is the best source we have of what is true, what is real. Where was the human race? Where were we? That was 4,000 years ago when Abraham was called by God to form a community of people. And he's formed them. And as soon as they started working together, they got caught into a slavery issue. We become slaves to everything that isn't really true. If you base your life on things that are not real, not true. Let's say I base my life on I'll be anything you want me to be, and that'll make me happy. It'll never work because that's not the truth. The truth is the only thing that makes me happy is authenticity, being who I'm called to be. That's why I want so badly for everyone to be who they're called to be. It's my message, I guess. But back to this image of what now I lost my train of thought, darn it. It's going to come, hang on. When people received, or when the human race received from God a figure called Abraham, we were in what's called the Bronze Age. Who knows? Who can stand up and describe the Bronze Age for me? Well, I can't. So the Bronze Age, guess what happened? Guess what was invented during the Bronze Age? The wheel. The wheel. Guess what else was formed in the human race? I guess where civilization was flourishing. the alphabet, written language. Isn't it interesting that God enters into the world with a story, an Old Testament we call it the Old Testament, which we should call it the first part, and Jesus is the conclusion. He's the final episode. Think of all these episodes. We watch series. Y'all watch series on TV. Anyway, so there's nothing is like a movie anymore. It's 8 years of monthly. It's long forever. But anyway, I'm listening to Homeland. Did you ever watch Homeland? Yeah. Anyway, I'm reviewing that. It's only 8 seasons. So it'd take me months to see it. But anyway, back to my issue, my story, what I'm trying to say. If that's the beginning, if God enters into the world when writing is being invented, do you think there's maybe a connection? Of course there is. He starts working with people when they are able to write it down, because we need this story. When you look at cultures, what makes a culture, there's a couple things that are crucial. Community, actually dance, and storytelling. Storytelling is so crucial, so essential. How many of you had your parents read stories to you when you were younger? Lots of you, You obviously are not as old as I am. Now, when we were growing up, at least this is my experience of growing up in a German family in the 1940s, children were independent, isolated individuals that you didn't pay much attention to for fear that you would maybe spoil them. I mean, that seemed like that's what I grew up in. Maybe it's just the German background, but having stories are so crucial, so important to our development. And to have this story written for us and to read it carefully and understand it brings us to the place of what I'm trying to say. It's a story about a God falling in love with human beings and wanting them to be an instrument with him, God, to bring to the world the fullness of what we're here to do. And then when it's all over, I don't know when it's going to be over, but then we're all together forever. So it's like we're all engaged in the work of the evolution of human beings as we evolve into what God has intended us to be. So that's why being authentic, being who you are, is crucial. And the way you help other people do that is not by fixing them or telling them what to do or having power over them and control over them and telling them this is the way you got to live your life. That's the shadow of religion. No, it's in somehow looking at them and believing in the beauty that they have within them that's there, that can only be awakened by divinity, and you are the one that can carry that divinity through you through your heart into their heart. And you don't have to have any kind of clear indication that it's working to believe it's working. In fact, it's better if you don't know. Are you good people watchers? Do you ever watch people? I used to love going to airports early because you can just sit there and watch people, wondering where they're coming, where they're going. Back in the old days, you could actually watch them meet the person that came in. Remember that? You'd be wait at the gate, and half of the people sitting there were waiting for somebody to get off the plane. Hey, it's a beautiful image of human beings longing for each other's presence. But sometimes when I look at the people, every once in a while, I'll just do this little trick, and I hope it doesn't look like I'm some kind of weirdo, but I want to see if I can connect with their eyes. Do you ever try to do that? Without, being obvious, And just every once in a while, and you can, sometimes you feel it, It's like, or when somebody, you ever had an exercise where you ask somebody that you don't know that well and you haven't, and just look into each other's eyes for a while? Do you know how uncomfortable that can feel? I've been to a lot of workshops, obviously, in my life, and I remember being at one, and we were supposed to do that, and I just couldn't do it after a while. I said, this is too, intimate. Anyway. The image of being filled with divinity and not making it about being a perfect person, a sinless person, a person without flaws or faults, is so liberating for me. Because I did grow up thinking that God does not like bad little boys. And he won't be there for bad little boys. Some of the stories I used to hear when I was growing up, I know the teachers that gave me these stories, they wanted me to understand it was important not to do bad things, but they left me with a very, very scary sense that if I did bad things, and if I died and didn't go to confession because I was Catholic, that I would be punished by a God by burning me forever. 7 years old, listening to that story. And how did I digest that? You know how I did it? I'll be the best little boy in the world. It never even dawned on me that I couldn't be the best little boy in the world. And then I guess I came up with that idea because I was a 3, you know? I could perform my way through this life and get the reward at the end. What a sad way to live, you know? Instead of engaged in something that is as exciting as being transformed by the presence of the person sitting across from me, the audience in front of me, receiving something from you, me giving you back something. And knowing it's working, and knowing that includes a lot of doubt and suffering, and that's fine. And feeling at times scared to death, like the plane is going to crash. I can't get up and talk anymore. At the same time, this calm and easy sense that everything is just the way it's supposed to be and it's all going to work out in the end. That is where we live, you know. And it's sweet, you know. Okay, Madeline, how's my time?
You're at time.
That was it? Holy whatchamacallit. That's amazing. I was thinking, oh God, I just started, now what do I do? Well, I'm going to pray for all of us. So, God, you are beyond our imagining in your goodness and in your desire, your longing just to have this intimate relationship with us. It's embarrassing at times in a way when you think about it. Embarrassing in the sense that I don't think I deserve it. But you have chosen to live inside of us with a love beyond all telling, beyond all imagining. And then when we feel that, when we know that, and even when we don't realize it, it does the most amazing things for the people we love. It's all about love. It's all about that flow of life between us. So bless each of us with open hearts to the angel that's sitting next to us so that we can feel and understand these mysteries, open and free to the people that we've loved that know so much more than we do and long for us to see and maybe even make up for what they've done to us that they didn't really mean to do, but they did it anyway and didn't know how hard it would be on us. All that. Bless us with all that so that we can live the life you've called us to live. And may the blessing of Almighty God, the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit descend upon you and remain with you forever and ever. Amen. Ta-da. Thank you. Okay. Whose house do we go to next? Okay, let's come outside and we can talk. 2